Hello, and welcome to Conversations with Reverend G. I am Reverend Grenetta Mason, aka Reverend G, and I'm here every Monday night to have spiritual conversations with special guests. My guests come from all walks of life, they are in all professions, and we get together and we talk about our spiritual journey. We talk about what's happening in the world. We talk about spiritual tools because one of my things is about the spiritual toolkit. So we talk about spiritual practices that you may add to your spiritual toolkit. And it's really exciting because my guests all have different spiritual practices that they share with us, and we can try some of them and create our own personal toolkit. I'm here every Monday night, but you can also find me every day on Facebook as Reverend Grenetta Mason and on Instagram as Rev Grenetta. And I hope that you walk away with something that you can use in your everyday life and understanding spirituality from a practical point of view and how it can support you, because my motto is supporting you in finding joy and living your best life with grace and ease. I'm excited about tonight's guest. Tonight's guest is Shereen Campbell. Shereen is an entrepreneur, an astrology. She's also a Reiki master, and she knows so many healing modalities that I'm excited for her to share with us all of the things that she knows and her spiritual journey. Welcome, Shereen.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. It's so wonderful to chat with you again. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I'm so excited that you could join me tonight. Well, introduce yourself and give a quick summary of who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like Rev G said, my name is Shereen Campbell, and I'm the founder of My Little Magic Shop, which is www.mylittlemagicshop.com. And so we are really kind of like training wheels for spirituality. So we are huge on helping people, especially when they're beginning their spiritual journey. So like Reverend G had mentioned, I'm trained in Reiki, as well as a crystal healer, Akashic Records practitioner, a shamanic practitioner, and an astrologer. So I have all these different modalities that I personally use in my life, and then I just really want to share them. And so you can come online and you can order your crystals, your candles, and we also have a monthly subscription box, which we curate every single month to give you more spiritual tools and the instructions to be able to utilize them every month. So I'm super excited about it.
That sounds good. And I was super excited when I looked on your website right today and to look at all the things that you put together. I especially like the little toolkit that you put together. And I like that the variety, the way you packed them up, right? It was really, really nice. One of the things that you could talk about is how I know you worked in retail for a while, right? And now I know you're an entrepreneur, and maybe you still work in retail, but talking about how you merge those two from retail to now creating this business.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they do seem like almost like polar opposites, right? I was like
Right.
this fashion girl, like a hardcore fashion girl, and then, got into all these beautiful spiritual practices. So, for roughly about 12 years, I kind of led not a double life, but like I had two sides, right? So
Mhm.
I started at Macy's. I was an assistant buyer. I went through their executive training program. And then from there, I stayed on the corporate side of retail, and I worked for companies like Saks, for Vince, and for Century 21 department stores, mostly in e-commerce, and buying and planning. So while I was doing that, I was also kind of just, being young and trying to adult, trying to figure out life. And
Mhm.
I feel like I wasn't super into traditional church, and I like wasn't really into I don't know, whatever I couldn't afford therapy, so I needed something that was affordable and that was kind of self-guided. So I actually started with Kabbalah, which was really interesting for me because it provided this super interesting and sound spiritual foundation for me. So I started in Kabbalah back in 2007, and then took all these beautiful practices, started to like change my belief system, and then I just decided I wasn't so much for organized religion. So I started kind of veering away from it and just started reading a ton of books. So I was like reading like Eckhart Tolle and like Don Miguel Ruiz, literally anyone I could find about why we're here, what we're supposed to be doing here, like why we suffer, all of those big esoteric questions. And then from there, I started to really get into astrology again. And I fell in love with astrology. It had this beautiful blend of like math and like logic with all of this esoteric stuff. So I started using it for my own personal understanding of myself and then understanding those around me. And then I started to share. So I would like give readings and stuff for my friends. And then things started to come true, and I was like, oh, I have enough for this. And then from there, I started to kind of expand into other practices. So I got into crystals, and I got into shamanism, and I got into timeline healing. So kind of from there, just kept building and building and building until eventually I was like, I want to do this forever. And I want to do this and so then I basically decided that I wanted to take my retail experience and combine it with my passions. And so that's where the birth of my little magic shop happened.
Okay, that sounds really, really good. As I listened to you, you talked about so many different things, right? Can you, for the audience sake, like kind of break down some of the practices and give us like a summary or just an insight into what the practices are?
Yeah, sure. So I'll start with astrology. So most people think about astrology and they're like, oh, like I'm a Libra and like you're Gemini.
Yeah.
Which I think is which is great because it gives you kind of a base foundation of astrology. So astrology is based on the idea that your moment of birth is unique to you and incredibly important. So I like to tell my clients that if they imagine when they were a little baby and they took their first breath and then they looked out into the solar system and it was like if everything froze for a second. And so that would create your unique natal chart. So what's amazing about that is that your natal chart is the only one that looks like it. Everyone else was born at that exact moment in that exact place. And so the ancients believe that that moment from your vantage point where the stars were is incredibly important to who you are as a person. It's almost like a reflection of the energy you've come into the world with. So what we do as astrologers is we look at that energy and we're able to say, oh, like here's some things about your personality. Here's some things you might struggle with. Here's some things that you might be really great at. And then we take that, we share it, and then on top of that, we look to see like where the planets are now in comparison, because the planets don't stop moving when we were born, they keep going. So we're saying, oh, like, this particular planet is sending vibes to your chart. So therefore, these are the specific things that you might be going through or the universe is pushing you to learn about. So I kind of like to think about it like the weather report, like chart and say, like, hey, this is going to be a really great time for a career, and like, of course, you still have free will. You get to choose what you want to do next or with that energy or not do with that energy. But at the end of the day, it's really about, your free will, but then also kind of what's happening in what's happening in the solar system and how it's affecting you. So astrology is my first love. I love it.
I have one question. Oh, before we go on, right? Right. But what came to my mind was using astrology in your everyday life. You know how some people will every day they read the charts, right? I have to read my astrology chart, right? And then what, right? You know, it's like, so the uses of astrology, when you talked about there are certain things that are happening in the month, or what would you say? Do we take it to the full extent, or how are we using it if we just like, oh, I have to read my horoscope every day?
Yeah, so I love that question so much because I feel like that's a huge reason why I incorporate astrology into my little magic shop and into our monthly subscription boxes, because I think it's really important for people to realize that free will is number one. We all have free will, right? So like
Mhm.
it's all about taking the knowledge of astrology and using it to magnify your free will, to move and flow with the universe. It's not
Mm.
about like, oh, because, Saturn's going to do this, then this thing is going to happen. Like, I don't think about it like that. I think
Mhm.
about it like, okay, there's a new moon coming up, right? So there's a really
Mhm.
big new moon coming up on June 10th, and
Mhm.
it's a new moon eclipse. So it's a supercharged new moon. So
Mhm.
anytime there's a new moon, I'm like, okay, I need to make time to set my intentions. Like,
Mhm.
because the new moon is the perfect time for you to start something new, initiate, plant seeds of intentions, right? So, like, there's
Mhm.
a quick story
Mhm.
about the new moon. So back in the day when the farmers used to plant, like when farmers used to plant, they would plant according to the new moon. And the reason for this was because the sky was the darkest. So like because the sky was so dark, the critters and things had less likely chance of being able to find your seeds, right?
Mm.
So you planted under the new moon for the best crop. If you tried to plant under a full moon, most likely your seeds would get eaten. So like
Mhm.
you hear the as below, so above or whatever,
Right.
a
Mhm.
similar thought process. So it's like during the new moon is the time for you to start things, to start thinking about ideas, to write down your intentions, write down your
Mhm.
affirmations,
Mhm.
because the energy of the universe is more receptive to helping you create something new. So
Mhm.
like so when I think of astrology, I'm thinking of how you can use it. So I say, okay, there's a new moon coming up. Set your intentions. Okay,
Mhm.
there's a
Mhm.
full moon coming up. It's all about releasing and letting go and cleansing and clearing. So it's like clean your house, like smudge your house, take a like nice, ritual bath to like remove all the yucky energy off of you. Like
Mhm.
it's about releasing and letting go. So I like to use astrology less from like, oh, let me read my horoscope and see if it's a good day for love. Like I like to read it to be like, okay, what can I do? How
Mhm.
can I
Mhm.
maximize my free will?
Mhm. I like that because it was so clear when you talked about the moons, like the new moon. When people they talk about, oh, there's a new moon or a full moon, and what does that mean on a practical level? How can we relate to the new moon? So the new moon set intentions, the full moon release, and that's great for me because it's just so simple, and I understand
Mm-hmm.
that simply, right, for me. And so I like that because if people can get it in a simple fashion, then you can get them more engaged in what it means and how to work with astrology from a different perspective.
Yeah.
So I really, really like that.
Yeah. And that's those are just two examples, right? Like so
Mhm.
there's so many more. Like when I work with clients, I'm like, okay, it's game time for your career. Like I want you to get really focused. Like I want you to set all your intentions about your career. I want you to write out everything you want to accomplish, and then I want you to get out there and I want you to apply for stuff and work hard and do all this stuff, because I'm like, it's game time, career time, for
Mhm.
depending on whatever their chart is saying. But I think that if useful part is like, if you didn't know for sure, right, then you would be like, oh, like, I think something's happening for me career wise. But if someone told you like, now is your time to shine, you would probably like step it up a little bit more.
It set an intention for all of that.
Exactly.
Right, exactly.
So, and
that does. It's true. It brings to mind when you read it, oh, this is going to be a great day.
yeah.
Based on that, you set you can then set an intention for how your day will be, right? So,
Yeah.
and I get what you're saying is that you choose. That free will is about choice.
Yeah, exactly.
Choosing.
It's about moving in flow with the universe, you know?
Yeah,
So like at the end
like
of the day, like, you know, my mom always says this thing, like, why are you pushing water uphill? You know, like, and it's funny thing. So and that just means you're like trying to force something that shouldn't happen. So it's about like moving in flow with the universe. So like, and trusting that everything's going to work out. But I think your astrology chart just really helps you understand how to maneuver and get yourself in flow. So that's why I love astrology. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those. I always think about too the how. How do I get to these places? Right? We're talking about how do we get to peace? How do we get to joy? What tools can we use to support us in moving into those spaces? So I like that, how astrology can support in many different ways.
Yeah.
Whoa, so that was number one. I guess I got carried away, right? What would be another one that you love?
Yeah, sure. So another, well, I'm also a Reiki master teacher. So I love Reiki. Reiki was probably the first time, well, one of the first times that I was like, oh, this energy stuff is real. And so the thought process is that a Reiki master or Reiki or anyone Reiki attuned basically channels energy down from the heavens through their body and out through their hands. And so it's not like you're, as the Reiki person, you're not healing anyone. You're allowing the universal flow, like energy to come through you so that you are encouraging the other person to heal themselves. So it's like a really beautiful, it's a really beautiful practice. And I feel like it's made me so much more sensitive to the energy. It's like weird because like like I'm a very logical, like I'm like a math person. Like in retail, when I worked in retail, I was like a math person, math science. So like this type of thought process at first was a little bit weird to me, but then I saw it working and I just thought it was like absolutely incredible. So I'm a huge fan. If you're a skeptic, to just get Reiki attuned and it'll change your mind for sure.
Yeah, I get Reiki, so I'm right there with you, right? So I totally agree, and 100% would say get Reiki, right? So yes, and I actually did the first level, and I can like calm myself down, but I also like to go to my Reiki master to get it, to just not have to do it myself.
Yeah, it's true. It feels so good to like, especially after you've been attuned and then you have someone work on you. It like feels extra. You're like, oh, this wonderful state of relaxation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Great. That's nice.
And then another thing that I do, so on Friday nights at 7:00, I host a meditation and magic circle. And so it's really fun. So the first 15 minutes or so, I talk about the astrology for the upcoming week. And then after that, I lead everyone through a guided meditation. So for guided meditation, I use a combination of timeline healing meditation and shamanic journeying meditations. And so they're kind of like these guided meditations where we go on trips basically, in our meditation, and we're always looking for further insight into ourselves and further healing. And I also beam Reiki, during these meditations, and then we kind of talk about what happened during them. People share, which is really, really beautiful. So that's another practice that I kind of combine the two a little bit. So shamanism is such a beautiful, beautiful practice. So my teacher, Itzhak Berry, he's like a He's amazing. He's like one of the best teachers. But you know, I learned some shamanic practices for him, so I used those in some of my healing work. And then for timeline healing, the thought process is that you either go backwards in time or forwards in time through meditation to send other versions of yourself healing. And so because you know time is now, everything is now,
Right.
going backwards or forwards, you are influencing your present state. But it's also a very beautiful practice.
That's really, really nice. I'm really, really excited about all these different practices that you're talking about because I talk about the spiritual toolkit and what and I and just giving people ideas of a lot of different practices that they can and educating them about the many practices that are out there because I say it's personal to everyone. You get to choose what works for you. And sometimes it's working now, and maybe something different is working, but having practices at hand, different practices
Yes.
that you can use.
Yeah.
Can you I ask people to take us through like your spiritual journey. How did you grow up? You know, at what time, how did you transition, and then how did you get to this point in your spiritual journey?
Yeah, I love that question so much because, you know, I find that most people that end up like doing the work that I do, like they started with trying to fix themselves and they
Mhm.
continue to try to fix yourself. Like I'm like by no means fixed. Like,
Right, and but you are no
fully
means there's
perfect.
anything wrong with you though.
Yeah.
What
It's
you fix it by no means you're already 100%
yeah.
okay,
Yeah. So it's like of course I am perfect. I own that. But at the same time, you know, I think that this human experience is one where we're just constantly evolving and
Yeah.
growing and building. So like I'm a big fan of like learning and sharing. Like those are my favorite things to do.
Me too.
You know, like I will start from childhood. Like I grew up in a single parent home. So my mom, she's from Jamaica, and she came to this country when she was 18 and had me when she was 21. So like I watched my mom with, you know, having a seventh grade education, like raise me, put
Mhm.
herself in college, work 2 jobs, buy
Mhm.
multiple homes. So my
Mhm.
mom's like, you know, she's awesome. Like she's like,
Mhm.
you know,
Right.
so it's like I grew up with, you know, such a strong role model that, you know, I could do anything that I wanted to do or be anything that I wanted to be, you know. And my dad also very involved in my life, so like he's been the same way. So both my parents grew up pretty much Christian, so in the church. But I think that one of the things that comes from when you're raised by a single parent is you spend a lot of time alone. I was the only child, so I think that my makeup. So like I can look at the astrology now and like understand it, you know, much better than I did when I was a kid. But you know, I'm a more emotional, sensitive person, you know, and I was always like a deeply feeling child, deeply empathetic, deeply feeling. And so as I grew older, I didn't know how to manage that. Like I didn't understand how to like, why do I feel all this, you know? And my mom being like someone who had a really difficult life and was just, you know, didn't have time to think about those types of things. It's just like, oh, you got time to think about that.
Right.
So I think when I was about 22 or so, I suffered my first real heartbreak, you know, where you're like, there's a pain in my chest and I think I'm going to die and I should go to the doctor. Like, everybody remembers that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, why do we suffer? What are soulmates? Like, you know, all of that stuff. And then that's when I got into Kabbalah. And so the folks at the Kabbalah Center were like super nice and, you know, like super caring and kind. And they had these really amazing books that were super short. They were like 50 pages.
No, okay.
And they dropped knowledge on you, like things that were like exploding my mind. So I think that started to really open me up to the idea that being human is not as simple as I thought it was. That there's more to our existence, that, it's not, that it's, that there's more happening, and so from there, again, I started to get really into astrology. And so I, through Kabbalah, started to kind of change my belief systems a bit, or like open them up and expand them. And then through astrology, I started to learn more about who I was as a person, right? So, like, I started to learn how to utilize astrology to start to move and flow with the universe. And then from that point, I started to kind of work with crystals, and had an affinity for crystals, like just really liked them and started to learn about them and started to wear them and use them. And then eventually I started doing all the shamanism work and the timeline healing work. So then meditation became a really important part of my practices. And then I started incorporating crystals into that. And then candles. So I'm a big candle person. Like, I'm generally always burning like 2 to 3 candles a day. I mean, like at any given point. So, so I started, setting intentions with candles, and writing intentions and writing affirmations, and like creating crystal grids, and like, started working with cards. And around the time that I started the shop, my little magic shop, I realized that like there's so many different modalities. Like, there's so many tools. There's so many different practices and things that you can incorporate and use in your self-care ritual, in your self-care practice. But on top of that, these are just things that you can, there's always something to learn about. There's always something to pull in. There's always something to try, which is beautiful, because then you look at what happened last year and like, thank God I had all those things.
Yeah.
Because like they really, really helped me to not fall apart.
Right, exactly. Right.
Yeah, like really just not fall apart, basically. So I think that it's by, reading a ton of books and just trying to be really open to as many different modalities as I possibly could. At the end of the day, they all contributed to me being able to tap into my inner voice a little bit more easily. And I think that, our inner voice is probably the key to everything. But, when we weren't taught, it's not something you learn when you're a kid or in school or something. You're not taught how to listen to that voice. You're not taught to how to learn if it's the ego or it's your intuition. So you're not taught how to separate the two. You're not taught how to, connect with that with yourself and at the same level that you are taught to connect with other people, if you are taught to connect with other people. So a big part of the reason why I created my little magic group was to share. It was to help people see, like, hey, there's a billion different ways for you to connect with your inner self. Like, a ton of them. I'm going to share as many of them with you as often as possible, and I want you to choose the ones that make you feel really good inside. I want you to try them, see what you like, and then you make whatever works for you. You go for it. If you're super into candles, do it. If you're super into crystals, do it. It doesn't matter. Nobody cares. I don't care. Right. All I want is for you to connect with, like, what's in here.
Right. And that's interesting. A couple of things came to mind when you talked about connecting with your inner voice. One, from like a religious God perspective, when we say we pray, right, to God, then how do we hear them except if we can go within and connect within to understand what that means to connect to God and to hear and to be one and connection. So that came to mind when you talked about, just connecting with that inner part.
Yeah.
And the practices that can support you, as you said, like the meditation, have you connect. with the inner self. And I think part of connecting with that then helps you know where your purpose is and support what it is that you want to do in your life.
Yeah.
And I like what you said, being able to connect and what will support you and connecting with that inner voice. And for each one of us, there may be a different practice, right? Or something that will have us connect. There
Yeah.
were two things that I wanted you to come back and explain: Kabbalah
Yeah.
and shamanism, because both of those were two of the words you're throwing out. And for everybody, it would be nice to have like a basic understanding of when you say, what does that mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. And then I just want to piggyback off of something you said earlier. Like,
Mhm.
I love the idea that, like we're having a conversation with the universe. We're constantly, God, universe, whatever you want to call it, higher, whatever.
Exactly. Right.
But we're in conversation. And I think often, when I was younger, I was kind of taught with this, like, it's like a one-sided conversation. I'm saying stuff and maybe it hears me, maybe not. Like, I don't know. But
Right.
like, I think that, like you said, the praying is the talking, the meditating is the listening.
Mhm.
And so like it's a conversation, and I feel like that's something important for people to understand, because like, yeah, you can be sitting there praying and talking and talking and talking, but if you ain't listening, it's a thing.
Right.
Like in any conversation with someone, if you talking the whole time and listening to nothing, then like it's not gonna move and it's not gonna go anywhere. Okay, so Kabbalah is actually it's the mystical sector of Judaism, which I think is super interesting, because I think I heard about it when like Madonna got into it. It's been around for a really, really long time. I think like 2,000 years or something, like a long time. And so what it does is it focuses on the Old Testament. And then I guess like this, please forgive me if I say this too weirdly, but basically a guy went into a cave with the Old Testament, and he locked himself in this cave. And then when he came out, he like basically wrote this 26 or 27 volume commentary on all of the, like, I guess, hidden messages or stuff that you would read between the lines, like based off of his meditation or whatever he was doing down there. And he came up with like this magnitude of information. So for many years, it was actually a secret practice. And like, not only was it secret, it was only allowed to men over a certain age. Even allowed to access the knowledge and information. So what I find is that most of the major religions have a mystical sector, right? Like I think Islam, like you would know better than me, but like most of them have like a mystical sector. And what I find really fascinating is that there's so many similarities between them. Like there's a lot of overlap and a lot of like, similar beliefs or thought processes, but just maybe said in a slightly different way. So Kabbalah is basically all about the esoteric and more mystical reasons why we exist and how we should be in the world. And so it just kind of there's a significant amount of depth. It's really esoteric. Like it's all about no, it's all about there's so much information. I can't even
I know. I'm sorry. You're like it's so much in that. It's just like, but we get the basic idea, right? I think everybody gets the basic idea that it is Judaism, but so and I understand what you're saying, because I'm an interfaith minister, so I study all the religions, right? And so for the sake of everybody listening, I wanted you to give them a quick summary. So I think they got enough, right? Because as you're saying, it's just so much, right?
Yeah.
And then what about shamanism?
Yeah, so shamanism is also really beautiful. So I won't call it a religion, it's more of a tradition.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of indigenous people, mainly focused in South America, practice shamanism. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of this it's like nature, so it's about connecting with nature, like accessing the universe, accessing God, whatever you want to call it, through nature, and then also using nature to kind of go within.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's,
Mm-hmm.
it's a really beautiful practice, and so shamans are the ones that kind of, hold space, but also stand between the worlds. So
Mm-hmm.
they're able to travel into the spiritual world, and then also be in the earthly realm, and so they're known to go between both, helping people to kind of go within to a deeper
Mm-hmm.
level and understand themselves a bit more.
Yeah, it's really a lot and very interesting, right? And I love that you're supporting people in exploring all of these different possibilities and ways to support them in living their lives. And that because there are just so many different things. And tonight, you've talked about a few practices that we haven't talked about on the show. So I'm really excited, right, for you to continue to talk more about some of the practices that you do. Now, I know, and I might shift here a bit, right, because I know you've done a lot of practices. So when we talk about you being an entrepreneur, we can shift to that, right? And tell me, I mean, and I read your story a little bit about taking your income taxes and using that to start your business. Tell them a little bit about that and talk about we had COVID last year and where you were. Kind of give us a little synopsis on how you survived through all that.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I started my business back in 2015. So, at the time, I mean, I didn't make that much money. I live in New York City. It's super expensive. And I like knew that like I wanted to start a business. So I was like, okay, like I have this big, huge, grand vision, but how do I get there with no money? So I'm like, oh, like, should I go ask people for money? But that didn't make me feel so comfortable. So I was like, okay, like, be scrappy. And it's like funny because I read Damon John's book, The Power of Broke, right? And so a big thing about that book is that he talks a lot about using brokenness as an asset. So it's like, so what if you don't have that much? You have like one of the best, like you have an advantage over everybody else with money, because it's easy to grow a business with money, but if you can do it with no money, then you have a winning formula. So I really took that to heart, and I tried to just become as resourceful as possible. So I took that money and I used that for the bare minimum of what I needed to get started. And then from that point on, I basically budgeted a portion of my paycheck. And I was like, okay, I guess, like, less happy hour, or like, maybe
Right.
we can't be taking Ubers like that as much anymore. Um, it'll be well worth it. And I just put all the extra money I had into the business. And so one of the things I did was I hired freelancers from Upwork, because I was still had a full-time job. So when you have a full-time job, you have less time. So I hired people to help me. And like that really helped, not only help the business, but it helped to keep me motivated, because there were, people that, were spending 5 to 10 hours a week, to support believing in the dream and pushing it forward. So that was really, really helpful in terms of in terms of growing my journey. And then from there, we just got scrappy. We just tried to make friends with whoever we could. We posted on social media. I read tons of books. I read a lot of books that gave me lots of ideas. And then I went to watched lots of YouTube videos. I asked anybody I can ask. I asked anyone I could ask, questions. I made friends and just asked people questions. I think one of the things that kind of goes out the window when you're an entrepreneur is like pride, you know, like, like you're like, you know what, like either you're gonna fail or you're gonna ask for help, you know. So like you don't feel ashamed of not knowing stuff anymore. You know, you're just like, I don't know. Yeah, you just tell me, like, please help me. So I did a lot of that, and you know, I think that helped to start to, you know, make friends with people, and then, you know, people started to buy stuff, and then we treated our customers, we still treat our customers really nicely. Like we write handwritten thank you cards, like try to give away as much free stuff as we can. Like we try to do things. We try to package all of our things with so much love and joy and care, so that people choose us over like Amazon. You know, because like, no offense to Amazon, I shop on Amazon. You throw stuff in the box. You know, like when it's something sacred and beautiful, you want to know someone's, you know, treated it with love and respect. So you know, that's my journey of entrepreneur. It's still going. You know, like it's, you know, it's an ongoing thing. And you know, last year was definitely a really interesting year because I ended up losing my full-time job. And that was not in the plan, but the universe had other plans. So the universe just laughed at my plans. But it was probably like absolutely terrifying, but absolutely freeing all at the same time. And because I got to, at least for a few months of last year, I got to focus entirely on the business, which was like really beautiful. I was just making magic all day. Yeah. So yes, that was great. So I just, you know, I think that the journey to entrepreneurship is hard. So I don't want, you know, I think sometimes people have this idea in their mind, like, oh, I'm going to have this business and it's going to be great and I'm going to be rich and, you know, yachts, all that stuff. And I'm like, you know, maybe one day you will get there, but like you have to, number one, be truly, deeply, deeply passionate about whatever it is that you are working on. If you don't have that, then it's not going to work, because that is what keeps you going.
Right.
It's what drives you.
Right. Why am I doing this? Right. It's what will keep you going for it. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's really good. How did you come up with the name, The Little Magic Shop?
Yeah.
My Little Magic Shop.
I don't know. It just came to me one day and it had a ring, and I was like, it's my little magic shop and I want to share it with everyone. And it can be their little magic shop. Everybody's going to make their own magic, and everybody has magic. You know, I'm like obsessed with the word magic, because I think that, you know, often the term has been misused. Like we call everything magic. If you go back to like, you know, the 15th century right now with a cell phone, they would burn you at the stake. You know, they'd be like, it's magic. You know, so like it's just magic. It's just things that we don't understand. And when you think about it from that perspective, like all this stuff, I'm calling it magic, but I bet you 500 years from now, they're going to be like thinking we're barbaric. And like, they're like, what was wrong with them? They didn't understand the law of attraction. Oh, they were so silly. They were like, they just couldn't manifest things. What? Like, how did it take them so long to get, how did they get that far? Like, I feel like they're going to be making fun of us, but like, I really appreciate the word magic, and I think it's a beautiful word, and I knew that I wanted to incorporate it. And so I feel like it's also kind of play on words, because like there's no little magic. All magic is freaking huge.
Right.
Like unimaginable. It's you know, it's big. So it's, and I feel like it's kind of like my gift. I feel like my gift is to share, is to learn and share, and I get to do that.
Yeah, I know you have, what is it? Your podcast is the Magic Hour, right? What do you do in that hour? What can we expect when we join you in the Magic Hour?
Yeah, so I'm incredibly interested in the story of from like to a healer, right? So I find that like most people that end up becoming these beautiful magical healers, it was because they had some sort of like trauma or some unconventional upbringing or like
Mm.
in their life early on that made them start asking the big questions. And it was trying to heal themselves that kind of led them to want to heal and help other people. And so I love to hear that story because I think sometimes people look at healers like, oh, like, wow, you're like, like we have this idea of like we like to idolize people, like as a we're like always idolizing and like putting them up, and I'm like, no, like these people are just people that went through extraordinary things and came out of the other side of it with gifts that we all have, so like
Mhm.
think about like Jesus, right? So like I think about Jesus because I love the story of Jesus, because one of the biggest things he ever said was, I can do it, so can you.
Yes, that's what I love about Jesus
You.
too, right? The Jesus story is fascinating. You're right.
Yeah, like he's like I'm not special. I'm
Right.
not special.
Right.
You can do this. I can show you how to do this. And I
Exactly.
think that like the fact that Jesus is going around saying that, like, like I don't think he would be saying that for like props or like anything like that. He didn't seem like the type that was going
Right.
after fame back, back in those days. But I feel like if he truly believed that, then it's true that we are much more powerful than we even realize.
And
And
it's all about what we really believe, right? And I'm reading this book now, The Power of the Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy.
oh,
And it's everything you know, but it's reinforced, right? When you read it again, you go, oh, I know that. But it's the practice of it. How do you practice, right?
yeah,
Um, Understanding how the subconscious mind works and using it to have your best life, right?
yeah,
And using it in a way that it supports you in having everything that you want. So I am just so into the whole process of getting back to that. And I've been doing it all along, but then sometimes these books come along and you're like, yes, I'm in
yeah,
it. And it reinforces what you've known and what you've been doing. So then it becomes more of the practice.
yes,
I generally talk about spiritual practices.
yeah,
And the reason I do it is because, religion and spirituality are different. And I've always wanted to create a space where people could, if they wanted to talk about religion, but talk about it in an open way where how does it work for you? What does it do? How is it impacting your life? Not in the way that Christianity was taught to me. It took me to get grown to learn new thought and to read unity and to read and to understand spirituality from a new thought perspective as opposed from the way I was taught as I was growing up. So after that, you kind of leave and come back. I feel that after I love Jesus more after I learned about every other religion, right? You know what I'm saying? And right, I could even understand and relate to the Bible and Christianity after the journey of studying other religions.
yeah,
Um, so I say all that, right? To say a part of it is having people be able to have the conversations with
yeah,
Reverend G. It's really about, if you want to talk about religion, we can talk about religion, but we want to talk about spirituality. And if we talk about religion, well, how's it supporting you every day? Nothing against religion, but how is it supporting you every day? I love gospel music, right? It supports me every single day, right?
mm-hmm.
I going to church, I would go to church given the minister was talking about something that resonated with me, right? Church is a good place, it's community. So all of that is important.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I come on the show, I talk about spiritual practices for the spiritual toolkit. And you've given us so many today, right? That I think I could think of like a million more that I see on your list. But can you talk a little bit? What I wanted to hear more about was the crystals.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm like picking up on these things, right? Can
Yeah.
you give a little, just a little synopsis of how you use the crystals and how, say, if I wanted to start to use crystals, what would that look like for me?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. So the thought process is that crystals are energy too, right? So
Mhm.
they're energy. So we are energy, like like the science can tell you that like if based off of like the space between that, I don't know the science very well, but more or less we're made up of energy, right? So
Mhm.
like we are made up of energy, everything is energy. And like then you start talking about quantum physics and it's like, like we're not fully solid, but we're kind of solid, whatever. Anyway, crystals are I am like looking at a crystal now because I have one. Here's some amethyst.
Right.
Crystals are also energy. So, like, they're really beautiful. But the great thing about crystals, each crystal has its own energetic frequency. And so these frequencies can connect to a particular intention, right? Or a particular feeling or something. So, amethyst, for instance, is really about connecting with your third eye. So, it's like a third eye crystal. So it's
Mhm.
all about your intuition, heightening your sense of inner peace, like understanding yourself a little bit more. So what happens is just like you would drink a glass of water or something, because what you're doing with the water is you're basically like taking the water's energy and combining it with your energy, right? So
Mhm.
with the
Mhm.
crystal, what you're doing is by bringing it close, you're bringing it into your energetic field. So it's starting to interact with your energetic field, causing basically the vibrations in your body to change and to be more in alignment with whatever the crystal's energy is bringing to you. So,
Mm.
for instance, if you like I use selenite. It's one of my favorite crystals. It's looks like this. See, I have all these crystals by my desk.
No.
This. It's like
Mhm.
white colored. It comes in a bazillion shapes. Selenite's very inexpensive, but this is like one of my favorite crystals ever. So
Mhm.
selenite is fantastic for meditation. So like every time I meditate with selenite, so I'll hold it in my hand while I'm meditating, and I will feel like I'm floating on clouds. Like it is like it's so energetically it is like a cleansing crystal, so it will cleanse and clear, so like helping you to release any sort of gunk or buildup. So like
Mhm.
as we're interacting with other people, right? So it's like
Mhm.
have you walk into a room, right, and everybody's pissed off, right? And so
Mhm.
when you walk into the room, you're like,
Right.
like you feel funny. You don't know
Mhm.
what it is. Like the hairs on your neck start to stand up. Like you
Mhm.
feel weird,
Right.
right? And that's you sensing the energy of the room. So like think about that. So
Mhm.
selenite, on the other hand, is the opposite. It's like if you walked into a room and
Mhm.
everybody's meditating and like chilling out.
Mhm.
Hold it, and it's giving you that same type of feeling. So like I've experimented a lot with selenite because like I have friends that are like kind not really into crystals, but maybe a little bit. And so I have one
Mhm.
friend, and she has a little bit of she's nervous when she flies sometimes with her anxiety. So
Mhm.
so I was like, here, hold these. Like when we were on the plane, and she was like, oh my god, it felt so good. These really work. So and
Mhm.
I have friends that have tried them out that might not have super been into crystals, but they really did feel a lot calmer. So I think the best thing to do when you're first starting to work with crystals is like think of an intention or something you want to work on or want to use. So like say you're like, oh, I want to be more loving towards myself, so more self-love. So I would recommend to you rose quartz. So what you would do is like you would get rose quartz. You can wear it as a necklace, as a bracelet. This isn't rose quartz, but like you could wear it as a bracelet. You
Mhm.
could put it under your pillow, anything you want, wear it in your bra, like carry it in your purse, and then start to see if like you're feeling more loving and like
Mhm.
observe yourself with that crystal. So, and then there's a ton of other things you can do with crystals, but that's a great beginner situation.
Yeah, I love that. It has been so great, all the different things that you have talked about tonight that can be added to the whole spiritual toolkit. So, what would be the top three things that you say that you consistently do? If you know, out of all of these things, right? What would be the top three? And for you personally, because I know you work with all of these for your clients, but what would be for you personally your top three practices?
So I always like candles. So I generally like 3 at a time. I'm a big fan of 7-day candles,
Mhm.
just because they take 7 days to burn. So like I will, when one goes out, then I'll just like maybe wait till the next day, or if I know there's a new moon coming, I might wait a couple days or whatever. But I always have them burning, and I set an intention. So like I have one for like keeping my house calm and like high vibration. I have a personal one for whatever personal thing I'm working on. So if I'm like, okay, like this week I really want to, go inward more, listen to my intuition more clearly, or like I want to. So I was like feeling stressed out this week, so I lit a candle where I was like, okay, I'm going to release all my stresses to the universe, and like every time I think of stress, I'm going to think about it in a hot air balloon going away to the universe. So I lit a candle for that, and then I always have a candle burning for my business. So like one for just prosperity and abundance for the business. So that's one thing that I do. Another thing I do is I'm a big card puller. So like every time I sit at my altar, I'll pull normally like from 4 different decks because I like them. And I made
Like four, right?
I know it's like extra. I made a deck that it's not like available for sale yet because I'm still playing with it. But I made a deck last year, and it's based off of my guides, and so I use those cards a lot. And they're very much like, okay, like what is the universe guiding me towards this week? Or this or today, like what do I need to focus on? Like what do you want? What lesson am I working on? And then I also I like to do like shamanic journeying or like meditation. So like it's just like it just so I like to they're like more I guide myself through meditations. So I allow my like subconscious to like take me to whatever it needs to heal and grow. So those are like things that I do very consistently.
That's beautiful. So, how can people get in touch with you? It's been really great having you and all this information. How can people get in touch with you? And what would you like to leave us with this evening?
Thank you. Yeah, so you can find me at www.mylittlemagicshop.com. And we're also over on Instagram at My Little Magic Shop. So those are the easiest ways to get to us. We have a chat right on the website. So if you're looking for me directly, just be like, hey, can I see Shereen? And I will jump in. Jesus is our wonderful customer service rep. So he's always there. But if you need me, just ask for Shereen. But I'm so excited. What I want to leave you guys tonight with is, you know, the world kind of sucked in 2020. It was hard, but like I think that it was also an opportunity for you to look within, get closer to yourself so that in 2021 go forward you can make your own magic.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I love it. Like the little magic shop and making magic. So it's so good having you here tonight. And I would definitely be in touch with you because so many things, right? Um, felt like resonated with me. So thank you. And I will truly be in touch with you and listen to your podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. It was wonderful talking with you.
Yes. Have a great day.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Hello, and thank you for joining me tonight. Hello, right? I am excited that you're here tonight to be a part of Conversations with Reverend G. And I'm here every Monday night from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. with guest and we discuss spiritual practices and spiritual tools for your spiritual toolbox. And the goal is to support you in finding joy and living your best life. You can find me every day on Instagram as Rev Grenetta and on Facebook as Reverend Grenetta Mason. I'm also on YouTube as Reverend Grenetta Mason. So I'm saying to you, have a great, great week and practice listening to your inner voice. And I will see you next week right here on WEMS Radio at 8 p.m. See you later.